So I've actually seen this question come up a few times recently, so I figured I'd go ahead and make a video. Essentially, we're just going to make a controller that controls this type of garage door motion along a path. With this controller, you'll be able to rotate it in any position. This can be in any position as well, and it still functions properly, so this could be like a door on a spaceship or, whatever. Alright, so to get started, I'm just going to create my door panel real quick. I'm going to give it some arbitrary amount. Center the pivot. And then 0 the position. Rotate this into position also. And I'm just going to give it a little bit of detail. Put it on the ground. So you can see that the bottom is flush. So real quick, I'm going to create the curve. First, I'm going to see how high do I want this door. Alright, if that is the height of my door, I'll create a line. So create a shape, line. I'll just snap out some points. I'm going to hold shift, that way you can get some better placement. I'm going to grab these points and just 0 them out. Then I'll fillet this middle point, something like that. Alright, so I can get rid of these extra objects. That was just to get the height of the curve. So step 1, I just need to attach this object to the curve, so I'll use a path constraint. Select the curve. You can see the object snaps onto the curve, and it now has keys also. So if we scrub through the time slider, you can see that it's animated. So I'm just going to come to a point like this, and we need to tell it to follow the path. So in your motion panel, you can say follow, and then find the axis you want it to follow. If you scrub through, you'll see that it kind of flips out. You just need to say allow upside down. And if we rotate it 90 degrees, the object is going to follow the orientation of the curve. So here you can see the door is not flush with the ground, so all you got to do is move the curve up. And say, move it up 5 centimeters. 5 more to get that nice and flush on the ground. So real quick, I'll duplicate this object and position it along the path also. And you can see actually that I still have these keyframes, so I'm just going to select them and then delete. If you alt right click, you can say delete selected animation. Alright, now I'll position this object. It's about 5.2, 5.3. Like flush, which is good. So there's a difference of 5.3% along the path per object. So if we duplicate this, the next percentage will be 10.6. That'll get us flush with the other panel. Just keep going through. and one more. Real quick, I'll rename these objects. Door panel 1, and that should give me 6 for the last object. Good. Alright, so we have all these door panels constrained to this path now. We just need to control them with another object. So real quick, I'll create my control object, which is going to be the circle shape. But I'll just place roughly into this higher controller. So this is actually going to be a controller helper. I'll name these controller helper. So if I link the control, so this control right here, the circle, is actually going to be controlling the percentage of these objects along the path. So what I want to do is link it to its own helper. Or actually, a better way to describe this. So right now, if you look, its Z position is 0, which is good. So if we move this up, you can essentially, this is going to be a 1-to-1. If this were a 1-to-1, position controlling percentage along the path. So in the motion panel, we have this percentage along the path. If our position is controlling the percentage along the path, then if we wanted to put this controller, let's say, somewhere over here, the percentage along the path isn't going to really work how we expect, especially if this object is moving, and that's just not going to work right. So a way to get around that is to first create a hierarchy from object to object, so parent-child hierarchy. Now this control object here, we can move this, and if we freeze these transforms, so if you select both objects after you've established that hierarchy, alt right click, you can say freeze transforms, say yes. Now this object, well, both objects now have a new position and rotation controller. So if I move the parent object, this child 0 position, this 0 Euler, if you do not move this object, then it's resting at 0, no matter where this parent object is placed. So that means we can put this object anywhere and use the 0'd position to control the percentage along the path. So that's just the logic of why we're doing it this way. I'm going to switch to local, and you can see that the y-axis, moving the y-axis is what I want to control the opening and closing of the door. So what we're going to do is use wire parameters. You can select your door panel, right click and say wire parameters, and say transform position path constrained %. You'll get a pick whip, and you can choose your control object, which is going to be controller. So I'll say transform position 0'd position Y. You'll get the wire parameter dialog. You can see controller is going to control the door panel. So I'll just connect that immediately. And now if we start to move this, you can see that there has been a relationship established, but the movement is far too just inaccurate. It's not what we want. So what you need to do to get around this is we're going to convert position to radians. So even if it still feels too fast now, what you can do is you can say, well, if this value is being piped into the percentage amount, if we were to multiply that by 1, it would be the same number. So if you want it to be slower or more refined, you can just multiply it by a half. Now you can see that you get really refined control. So that's good. I'm going to copy this expression. So for the next object, I'm going to do the same thing. I'll select the object, and then in the wire parameter dialog, you can just refresh. I'm going to expand out to the percent, make the connection, replace the value, and then we can say connect. You can see that it jumps down because this zeroed position is being supplied into the percent value. So what we need to do is, if you look in this 5.3, this is where it's resting and this is where it's good. This is going to be our offset, this is 5.3. So all you have to do is I'm going to refresh these. This was dig, add, supply the Y position, multiply it by 0.5. Now I'm going to add my offset. Oops. Which is the percentage amount, and the offset you want to give the expression is 5.3 divided by 100. So I'll paste that in, and now when we make the connection, it's going to start when this controller is at 0. This object is essentially at its own offsetted 0. Now if I move this, both go together. So select the third object, refresh. Now I'm just going to go through these and make the connections with their offsets. Okay. So now you can see when we move this controller, our door is moving along the path. So obviously we don't want it to do this, looping in on itself. So what you can do is we're going to set a float limit on how far we can move this. So if you select your controller, in the motion panel, select its zeroed Y position controller, and we're going to assign a new controller. It's going to be a float limit. You'll see we can supply upper and lower limits. So if I say 0, it means I cannot move this object below 0. So I can move it up, I can't move it down no matter how much you try. So we're going to do the same thing for the upper limit. Bring it up to wherever it's good. Up there. Alright, so 83 seems to be my value. So you can just close this, and I'll just resize this guy, make it a spline, grab its points and bring them down. Alright, so now you can see that our controller is locked inside of its own little cage. If you can still move it around here, if you want to disable that, you don't need to assign a new controller. What you can do is come into link info and just lock these. Now all you can do is move it in Y. And if we rotate this, you can see since we're in local coordinate space, we can still move this along. And if this was, for example, the door on a ship or something, it can also move, and it can still open and close. So hopefully that was helpful. Take care.